But it's a pleasure to welcome you to our October event for IBA Stage. I will quickly introduce the series to those that are not that are less familiar with it. IBA Stage was initiated during the height of the COVID pandemic. To allow biennials that were happening to share their projects to the wider public and to colleagues. But over the course of time, we understood that the ability of building up an archive of biennials narrated by their makers was something quite valuable that we wanted to maintain. And this is why this became a regular event within IBA public programming. So I'm very happy to welcome all of you both on our Zoom, but also on our YouTube channel. And yeah, let's start today's event, which I'm really excited about. And I'm really glad that it's many of you present for this event. Which is, of course, about the most recent Biennale Jogja 2023. It's the 17th edition of the Jogja Biennial. And with us, we have Alia Swastika, who is the director of Yogyakarta Biennale Foundation. Since 2008, she has been the curator and program director at Art Gallery in Jakarta. In 2011, Alia became the curator of Biennale Jogja 11, together with Sumam Gopinath, and then in 2012 became one of the co-curators of the Gwangju Biennial in South Korea, of course. Besides doing curatorial work, she actively publishes articles in various newspapers, magazines, journals, and books at home and abroad. In 2015, she founded the Study of Art Practices, which publishes the journal Scripta, a medium for contemporary art discourse. And her book, Artist Negotiation Practices, Women and Gender Politics of the New Order, was published with research support from the Ford Foundation in 2019. Thank you for being here, Alia. It's a pleasure to have you with us. And of course, I should remind everyone, you're of course also a member of the board of IBA. So it's even more a happy news to have you with us. Also with us is Adelina Luft, who is an independent curator and cultural organizer whose practice emerged and developed in Yogyakarta along the colonial lines of thoughts and modes of working that favor processes, collaboration, and interdisciplinarity. Her curatorial projects address translocal affinities and the human-non-human relationship with land, migration, and identity. Since 2021, she is based in Bucharest, where she initiated various projects, among which We Are Here to Stay, with Arab migrants and refugees in partnership with the Romanian Peasant Museum, and projects such as the group exhibition Ecologies of Repair at GAEP. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. She is currently collaborator at Transit.ro, Bucharesti, and has already collaborated in various roles, both in 2015 and 2017 with Biennale Jogja. Also joining us today, and she's joining from Bucharest. Also joining us today from Kathmandu are Sheelasha Rajbhandhari, I'm hoping I pronounced that correctly, who is an artist, curator, based in Kathmandu. Her work draws upon embodied and speculative lineage of femininities to question the positioning of women across time, landscape, and cosmologies. Her practice is a provocation to reflect beyond neoliberal conception of time in order to enter patriarchal structure that perpetuates, sorry, I got distracted by a message. Patriarchal structures that perpetuate cycles of industrial extraction and individual exhaustion. For her, art making is about making space for collective action. This questioning feeds into her recent artistic and curatorial approach that recomposes notions of indigeneity, gender, worth, and productivity. Also joining us from Kathmandu is Hitman Gurung, who is an artist and curator based in Kathmandu by the way of Lamjung. Gurung's diverse practice concerns itself with the fabric of human mobilities, frictions of history, and failures of revolutions. While rooted in recent history of Nepal, his work unravels a complex web of kinship and extraction across geographies that underscore the exploitative nature of capitalism. These narratives revolve around the lived experiences, of migrants caught between the humanizing transnational labor-based industry and apathic nation state. He furthermore evokes indigenous methodologies and epistemologies to fundamentally reconfigure contemporary artistic practice. And last but not least, Eka Putra Nggalu, who completed his philosophy education at STFK in Ledalero, Maumere. In 2015, he was one of the initiators of Comunities Kahe, a community of interdisciplinary knowledge and practice that uses art to reflect ideas and social issues in society. Together with Comunitas Kahe, several projects and platforms are initiated based on activating issues, capital, and community potential. Just to mention a few among these projects, Maumere Jogja, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, Theater Festival, which ran between 2016 and 19, Maumere Exhibition, which ran between 19 and 22, Flores Writer Festival in 2021 and 22, voicing Bayo and Bugis people of Maumere in 2020, and Reimagine Bikon Blevut in 2022. As I said, I'm extremely happy to have so many of you from the curatorial team with us today, and I cannot wait to hear more about not only the project, but also how you collaborated, how you fused all of these knowledges and different perspectives and experiences together. And I would say, without further ado, I leave you the floor, and I will join you after your presentation to have a hopefully very enriching discussion afterwards. Thank you for being here, and looking forward.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Christian, and thank you International Biennial Association, IBA, that will give us the opportunity to reintroduce the Biennale Jogja, and it is a very right opportunity since maybe some of you already quite familiar with our previous direction, where in the last 10 years, since 2011 to 2021, Biennial Jogja actually working in particular theme. It's called as the Equator Series, where we work with countries around the Equator area. So since 2011, in every edition, we invited one country partner on one region to be the focus of our Biennale. So, for example, in 2011, we worked with India. In 2013, we worked with Arab region, and then with Nigeria, with Brazil, and then Southeast Asia. Then we closed the whole trajectory with Oceania. So after 10 years working with this Equator Series as more geopolitical fact, more geographical context as well, we decided, meaning the Biennale Jogja Foundation, we look into different context and expansion of the equator. So we expand the role and the notion of equator not only as the geographical map or cartography, but also more and more as a spirit. So even though we are going to work with the countries or the area beyond equator, but the notion or the spirit of the connection to the global south that really much came from our reflection to some historical moments will maintain as our foundation of all these trajectories. So I would like to start with sharing. So if you go to our website, the biennialjogja.org and then /2023, okay, I'll find the English. Sorry. Oh, what happened? Sorry. It's good to know. Okay. Yeah. So you will see mostly here in Indonesian, but it will give you the idea of, I will speak in English to give you the idea of the different contexts of this year Biennale. So this year we reached our 17th edition, means like we had operated the Biennale for 17 years, for 35 years, since 1988. And as I mentioned before, after the Equator series, we expand the idea of the Global South connection to two keywords, translocality and transhistoricity. So by transhistoricity, for example, I mentioned before how the Biennale Jogja Equator series somehow generate from the reflection towards the Bandung conference in 1955. So when we look into the next trajectory in the historical moments, we found also like the connection through the non-aligned movement, which is somehow referred to the Belgrade conference is in 1961, that also bringing up like different connection between the Asia, Africa, and eastern part of Europe in particular. So this becoming our starting point to reflect our challenge of internationalism. So we want to create like this transnational connection in the cultural scope, but looking into political and ideological context at the same time. So that's how we found our point of departure to the Eastern Europe. And then also at the same time, I think after the pandemic, we rethink not only about like village as a site of life or as a geographical fact, but most of the time also how the village contains different values, different narratives, but also embodied various knowledge, then it's become part of our everyday life. And all this knowledge sometimes taken as granted or somehow accepted is as something given to our everyday life today. So we are interested to look into different localities. So from the transnational reality, we want to explore how different localities in different parts of the world rethink about the embodied knowledge, rethink about the tacit knowledge, or how the methods of knowledge production in every localities somehow is different, but then reflect and redefine as well the influence of colonialism in shaping our modern thinking and our way of life these days. So this translocality and transhistoricity becoming like our working framework. And for Biennale Jogja 17, we work in 3 different areas of the village and a little bit more like urban. There is one area as one of the main building where we connected with the more governmental infrastructure. And then we work in these 2 villages. It's called Panggung Harjo and Bangun Jiwo. So maybe I give a little bit more context about the village that we were working with. Yeah, so one of the context that we dig into is how the agriculture and farming and food politics creates as well like trajectories of narrative that connected to the notion of gender, notion of food politics, climate, ecological knowledge, and also like the cultural or the art expression of the people. So in many of our venues, you can see how people maintain the traditional structure of the building as part of the community center. So we work a lot with the community center in different places, in different village. So this is all the traditional cultural space. And in Panggung Harjo, for example, the narrative really much connected to ecological problems, because this village actually is the first village in Yogyakarta that has their own waste management system. So if you are not so familiar with Jogja, actually now we have a big problem regarding the waste and the trash, since like the central trash area was closed by the government, since it was too full already and much over capacity. So it is now becoming really big crisis in the city about the trash issue. So that's why also we work closely with the government in this Panggung Harjo village to look into this ecological issue, not only connected to the trash, but also the whole system regarding our way of consumption, our way of feeding ourselves today, but some of the transitions between the life of the village to the rural area. And in the other, so this also connected to the fact in other village. So we develop some of projects, so not always creating artworks or objects or installations, but we work directly with the farmer and looking into the farming area as the site of experiments. So this is like all the situation in different locations that we use. So in terms of the form or the aesthetic of the biennial, it's really much shifting from the previous one, where we use, like most of the time during the last decade, we use the main building is the Jogja National Museum. But then this time we shift to this kind of community centers and open spaces and historical space, but also warehouse, where changing also the aesthetic and the artistic practices from the artists we invited. So this is like, for example, the local museum we found. So this is one of the main site as well. That is one of the, so we look also the transformation where the village as a landscape transforming from the agriculture area into kind of like industrial. So there are more and more industrial building being built in those areas, and this also transform the life of the people, from many of them working as farmers now more and more working as laborers, or at the same time also they created like small scale business, and many of the land and farming area getting abandoned. So this is the context of our like aesthetic transformation, but also the shifting of the artistic practices. Later on, the curators will be more detailed in explaining how this transformation also changing the curatorial methods, and at the same time also thinking how it's not only about bringing contemporary arts into the village and blending to the life of the villagers, but also as a way to unlearning and deconstructing our like established notion, what is art, what is craft, and what is the role of artists, and how the hierarchical positions between artists and artisans. So there are so many decolonial practices that happen along the way, and I think this one, one of the aspects that we really underlining in the process of creating this project and collaboration and exhibition. I think from me, it's more that side, and then the curators can share more about the concept of the exhibition, the focus, and some of the works that we presented during the Biennale. Thank you. So who will be starting from the curators?
I can start.
Do you want me to share the PowerPoint or from your
I will share my own screen. Okay. Thank you, Christian, for the invitation, and thank you, Alia, for the introduction. Very comprehensive introduction into the biennial edition. I'm gonna share my screen and show some pictures of the works that have been presented in this biennial. And I will briefly introduce my curatorial proposition or approach, which I think was shaped by several considerations and processes, which I will mention briefly. So first, as Alia mentioned also, there is a specific and particular culture and condition in Yogyakarta, understanding these larger community spaces and community work and the cultural and political context of Indonesia is something that has been underlying the selection of the artists and initiatives from Eastern Europe, from my side of, from my position. And I wanted to mention that I have experienced firsthand these situations and in this context of Yogyakarta. And therefore, from this position, I try to mediate the knowledge that exists in this particular locality with knowledges elsewhere, such as in Eastern Europe. And from this embodied and kind of experiment and experiential processes, I can acknowledge that there are various commonalities and affinities that we share from these two localities, which is essentially related to the relationship between human and the land. and all the value systems that emerge from this relationship. And these value systems are, of course, related to conviviality, to the sociality around land, around soil, but also how we acknowledge and how respect nature cycles. And these values are being shared among various cultures, translocal cultures around the world. And one beautiful concept is the Latin American philosophy of buen vivir, of the Andean Amazonian culture, which refers to this idea of knowing how to live in harmony with the cycles of Mother Earth, with the cosmos, with life, and of history, and in balance with every form of existence in a state of permanent respect. And of course, these values have been shattered by the colonial, neoliberal, and capitalist forces, and they continue to block these possibilities of creating a real social and environmental transformation. So the curatorial framework from my position tried to look at artists and initiatives that resist these dominant forces, which are also, like Alia mentioned, perpetuated by this Western hegemony of Western knowledge hegemony, and also by the dominant art-making forms of production. So this is a work of Dan Vezentan. He's from Bucharest and worked in Jogja on this land that is in the area of Bangunjiwo. And he created this kind of a monument or tribute to agricultural workers, collaborated with artisans, with craftsmen who helped him producing this public sculpture. And he is interested in the universe of the rural universe in Romania, in Eastern Europe. And then in Yogyakarta, he found these baskets, and he called this harvesting structure. So this is a series, and this is the rice collector. And it's very also interesting how it's positioned in this dry land. So it's also talking about the issues that are now faced in these rural communities, just like Alia mentioned, how this village transform into more industrial areas and the land is depleted and so on. And then more pictures of the details. And another interesting work is the one of Anca Benera and Arnold Estefan, who recreated this perpetual harvest. It's a series of rockets that talk about the the politics of food and the war of Ukraine, who when you restrict the transportation of crops such as wheat in Europe, it becomes a kind of weapon of war, and it has effects and consequences on the economy, on the culture, and so on. And there is also this beautiful video work, which is referring to this first consideration I mentioned about the ways of resisting dominant Western cosmologies, or actually the dominant Western forms of knowledge. And it takes a story of Ursula, who was a woman who disguised as a man, and this whip cracking was a gesture to chase away the enemies or the evil spirits. And it's set amidst a military camp in Cincu in Romania, which has become a NATO headquarters for military trainment. So it's an interesting antithesis and visual forms or dualisms that emerge here in this relationship of the power of the military and forms of resistance that look at traditional knowledges as well. And one more example in this would be Alicia Rogalska's video, a collaboration with women from a rural area near Budapest. So it's looking at this, talking about sociality and conviviality and community life that has been shattered by these colonial forces or actually the neoliberal forces in East Europe. It's also one aspect that emerges in various works when we refer to this geopolitical location. And furthermore, the second consideration that framed the curatorial proposition was related to the what Alia mentioned was the umbrella of the biennial, which is about translocality and transhistoricity. So while the first one refers to these forms of resistance that I mentioned and the idea of creating a more just social space and places for art making that acknowledge the work of craftsmen or artisans and so on, the trans-historical dimension takes a different meaning here for the artists coming from this region, because it tries to relook at these past transnational solidarities of the Bandung Conference, of the non-aligned movement, but also about the values embedded in socialism and in communism, not as a way to eulogize, to look positively about a certain ideology, but more to open and to unpack a more inclusive reading of history, one that acknowledges, for instance, the role of women in agriculture, in politics, and in the history of word making, which refers to both narratives that have been marginalized or erased in these historical processes, but also how we can speculate on a more feminist history from a critical contemporary lens. And this is the work of Anka Bukur, who is talking about the history of collectivization in agriculture and how women have been brought into the labor force and have become a place of education for them. So it takes also a personal story. The patches that you see in the work in the front are from her family members, the women in her family who live in the village, like her grandmother and mother, and then created a dialogue with another work, another textile made in Yogyakarta during the residency, where she investigated women of cooperatives, one of them being in this area of Bangun Jiwo, with women doing their own small agricultural, working on this small agricultural land for the benefit of the community. And another work that refers to this transnational dimension is the one of Jasmina Cibic. She's a filmmaker, artist from Slovenia, but lives in London. And she's made this beautiful new video called Beacons, related to reinscribing the women voice within the history of word making that refers particularly to the non-aligned movement and the meeting of the cultural workers in 1968, or if I'm not wrong, and how the voices of the cultural workers have been now transferred as a voice, as instruments, and the voice of women through instruments that pass from one to another. And also here work by Anna Hofner, related to the collection of Tito in Montenegro, where there is still 4 women who are taking care of the collection, which were gifts, artwork gifts to Tito from the Global South countries. And also this very interesting banner that presents exhibitions, feminist exhibitions, triennials and conferences which never took place. So thinking about how a history of more feminist history would have looked like, or if women have been involved in these processes, political processes. And yeah, the third consideration to finalize is related to the different venues that have been used in this biennial, and how in these 2 villages near Yogyakarta, as the location of artistic residencies and the production and presentation of works, which had to consider local resources, the local community, forms of collaboration, of giving back and not only taking something, and also thinking ecologically and in relationship with the issues that are being faced by the villagers, the land and the soil and its harvest. And this is a work by Edward Constantin, made in collaboration with his assistant Tomo. It's like a mobile construction that can be used for rest or for taking shelter from the sun and so on, and it will be given to the artist, to Tomo later on. And this is a collaborative work by Guna Sterkol from Istanbul. She always works collaborative through embroideries, so we collaborated with women from Desa Prima. It's a governmental initiative to empower women in the precarious financial conditions. So the workshops talked about their dreams. So the work is called Women's Dreams. It used patching as a method to kind of create a sort of collective resistance and to voice out their dreams and hopes. And also related to the venues, it's also important that we consider venues that have a specific social, cultural and historical reference, and were taught to create a dialogue with existing works of artists such as Ilona Nemet's long-term research on the Eastern sugar factories in Central Europe. So we showcased this research into the Madukismo sugar factory area, which is still operating, one of the few operating sugar factories in Indonesia. So it used sugar cane and in dialogue with the sugar beet history from the colonial era and how they intersected during that time and throughout time until the current contemporary situation. And also thinking about the location, as Alia mentioned, and how they transformed and how they have been engaged with in a way that produces knowledge and exchanges knowledge between participants, is Jelica Jovanovic, an architect from Serbia who works on restoring wine cellars in a village in Rogljevo in East Serbia. So she works with earth as earth architecture. So there were several workshops in which students from the architecture school learned about how to use earth in restoring and preserving vernacular architecture. And hopefully this project will continue. So it's something that we tried to propose, to initiate, and hopefully it can go later on with the work of the students. And this is also a very interesting project dear to me, is the experimental station for research on art and life, and how we think about the venues where we inhabit, where we exhibit these works, and how you will see relates to the works of Eka's communities, which speak about forms of self-organization and self-governing. And this is an initiative outside of Bucharest, 1 hour away, and thinking about how to build cultural institutions from the bottom, thinking about the ecology and the communities and the local biodiversity and so on. So it's a collective who co-own a land and try to work together to build something there in the future, and also to become a space of learning and of failing, and also of resisting, of thinking how we respond to the situations of the current times, which are it's taught in a post-development perspective.
Thank you, Kristen, and thank you everybody for joining us. Thank you, IBA, for this opportunity to share. So we're gonna start with few of images from the exhibition and also from the Jogja experience. So first, yeah, when we were invited as a curator to join the Biennale, so the first things came in our mind is how we look on, like this trans historicity and trans locality in context of where we are based, and also through our region and in a larger context, in the discourse of how, like the decolonizations and also deconstructing the idea of what it means to trans historicity and trans locality.
Yeah, we were also thinking, so it was this transition within Biennales, the Biennale's transition itself kind of aligns very much with our own practice. Because the non-alignment movement, we also had like a lot of discussion within the programming of the Biennale, and also of like within the casual communications also, like how there is like how we should acknowledge the burden of certain things, and when certain things started to get idealized, and how do we be self-accountable as well. And despite the fact that the notion of trans nation was a radical approach on the non-alignment movement itself, it still comes with the framework of nation state. So this time to break those boxes and nations and formalities and governments. So we have embraced the idea of the Biennale has embraced the idea of translocal and trans history, and as a practicing artists and curators, that's exactly how we function also, and also acknowledging the indigenous knowledges, and how the borders have become problematic entities, and then which has divided indigenous community, especially in our regions, where like one indigenous community is divided into multiple nation state now. Also acknowledging the idea of Titen and senses, and how in the contemporary world, how the exhaustion has led us to be in the state where we are so distant from our own senses, and the idea of intellectuality, science, and rationality is more valued and more valid, and our own intuition and our gut feelings, we don't trust them. Then how it's a long process, of course. It's a long process. Maybe it takes a generation and generations, but maybe how do we start to
Acknowledge or
yeah.
So it's also kind of more like not just like we, like discussing like it's more like not a theory, but how can it be like living practices. So what does it like we value most, like a kinship and the relationship, and how this process of learning and all learning can be a like kind of process of continuity of our value practice. So we're gonna share a few images which we had this amazing like moments with our residency artists, collaborators, and the volunteers who were being part of this, like memorable moments. And it's more like not just kind of art practice, but how can we, like learn and celebrate, acknowledge this kinship of being together, or kind of like for us, it was more like, like doesn't end as a project, but how can it continue as a friendship which go beyond all this, like art events or the projects.
Something about trans locality and trans historicity is also like how when we were slightly younger, and then still now, how there's a strong binary between what is local and what is international art scene, and local is supposed to be less like inferior, and international is something standard. It's something you have to look up to. It's always more powerful than who you are. Then with this idea of translocal, then it gives us opportunity to really bring back our own voices and acknowledge our own people, and then we'll really make things fluid, where like farmer and artists from village of Nepal is collaborating with farmer and artists from village in Jogja. So that all those walls of inferiority, anxieties, we don't have that, and we break that, and it's all like heart-to-heart communication. Another very interesting thing also about the embodied knowledge, the exchanges of embodied knowledge, which we'll talk about more, and how despite not understanding each other's languages, there are certain embodied knowledges through which the artists were communicating with each other, and the locals, and the practices which was in their body from generation to generation.
And also like how it, like organically or naturally the conversation and communication happened. Like it doesn't have to like specific instruction to be part of the or participate in the process, but how like people feel just like without any instruction, how they feel closer to the works or the process, and without any instruction, how they can get the sense of the what we were doing. Like this is a process of Shriti and Deepak. So when we were like piling off these prawns, so the local, like the neighbors, just participate in the process. So
Yeah.
So when we, it's like, for example, it's one of the like direct connections of Java Island, Indonesia and Nepal was through the colonial era. So during the colonial period, Nepal, especially from my community, we were forced to join this Gorkha army and serve for British. So we were mobilized, my ancestors were mobilized into like Singapore, Bahrain, Brunei, and also the Malaysia, and like one of the like direct connection is through this Batik, for example, which was originated from the Java Island, but now how it been adopted in our community, in the different indigenous community in Nepal, as now how this, we call it like a lungi now, which is kind of becoming like a cultural dress for the lots of indigenous women.
Yeah, so in one of the venue, we had the archival images. The images you just saw is from Hitman's family. And then we had archival images and the lungis, and the batik from Jogja itself. And you can also see like this stickers which says Dutch prints from Java. And then actually a lot of people who a lot of women who wears lungi in Nepal have no idea about the origin of batik in Java, because print print is come from Europe. Actually, the lungis come from Europe, and the prints are inspired by Jogja batiks. Yeah, this is what our colonization has done to us. And there were some beautiful connections, like of Alian, the artist Alian, who is from Eastern Himalayan region, and Matraita collective. And I don't know why okay. And yeah, sometimes some things are like so intense, and we're doing injustice actually, because there are so many layers of intensity and exchanges and
nuances.
And yeah, like nuances, and we can't say it in a presentation. But yeah, well, like so both the collective and Alian, they work with upcycled materials, and they're very conscious about the environment. But what also beautifully happened was when Alian was coming, one Alian wanted to visit Mount Merapi. She had also brought seeds, which is like she has placed here. And then when she offered it, the locals there in the mountain recognized the seed, and they said the tree is actually sacred to us. Also, we never cut the tree because it stops the flow of the lava, of the volcanic lava. And then apparently I also researched after that, and then that particular tree extends from South Asia to Southeast Asia, but particularly to Java Island. And so that's how the collective Matraita and Alian started her journey. And it's also important to acknowledge how people who are living in the mountain itself perceives it versus how colonizer had established mountains and seas as administrative territories, as a resources which can be extracted. But for people who are living in it, it's sacred. In Alian's community itself, her people is believed to be from the snow of the Kanchenjunga mountain. And a similar very important sacred story is also from the Mount Merapi, where Nagaraja resides, and the Mount the Kanchenjunga mountain also has the river Tista, very important river. So this
2 rivers, one famine and one.
Yeah. And in the river flows the water dragon. And in Jogja, in the mountains, it has the Nagaraja. So all these connections and how it is sacred, but also something which has to be protected. And sometimes, like the idea of the theory of Anthropocene also is sometimes very colonial through a colonial lens. And how do we decolonize the Anthropocene itself through acknowledgement of this very delicate relationship between the
people living there and
yeah. And similarly, like in front of Alian's work was actually Alfred and Tayu's work in the same venue in Taman Budaya, and it was so intense that maybe I also can say it later. And how artists were being able to connect with each other through the ancestral knowledge, like that Alfred and Tayu talks about Timur, their place Timur, which is divided now with the borders, and they also installed the with the stone and the wood, and which is the representation of their ancestor and shrine, and their divinity through the pig's fat. And then I'm again doing injustice. There's so many layered and like political and ancestral and so much of spiritual knowledge there. And what was happening was the artists were connecting with each other, and you know, like there was this almost this serendipitous connections, and also validating each other through the pain, through the knowledge. One of the things which is which we kind of you know, like when we talk about senses and bringing back our senses or acknowledging our senses and how far away we are with it. One of the things when people talk about indigeneity and indigenous knowledge is just related with survival, and how they have survived in the harsh environment or with nature, this or that, but rarely it's talked about the celebration and how people are thriving. And Deepak and Shriti, both coming from a farming background, was exploring the idea of
so idea of drying, you know, like grains, crops, and the different techniques used by the farmers, indigenous farmers community in Nepal, which also kind of common and similar in the, you know, like Southeast Asia regions also, but also not looking it only as an aesthetic of the presentation, but you know, like acknowledging the how especially from the women's has, you know, like experience or kind of like expecting a safe or kind of like their own personal space, time through the process of this, you know, like drying grains or crops after the, you know, like very exhaustion experience of harvesting. So it's also kind of acknowledging the healing aspects through the process, because like when after the crops harvest, so it's kind of also taking a break from this laborious work and getting some times to you know, like leisure times for itself. So they collaborated with like art students from Jogja Art University, and also the local farmers. They did their research there, looking through different types of crops, and actually when you see the grains, it's made of like terracotta. So when you touch it, and it's also kind of participatory installations where you know, like visitor can come and touch and sense of the grains with like amazing sounds.
Yeah, so how while braiding different grains and while drying it, there's like one major thing, which is of course how to save it from the moisture. And there's also this knowledge, which is, it is very, very intuitive actually, then how much humidity it has and in which angle should the grain be.
So all the grains get the sun heat.
And then when you touch it, then you know how much of humidity it has. And it's something, you know, from generations to generations, like people have passed down to it. But another very important point, which we've already mentioned, is that the area, the feeling of therapeutic area, where while touching different grains, it also has this, there's some sort of peace in it. There's also hues in the therapy world, there's also hues practice of sensory grains actually nowadays. And the Treaty, and they were trying to acknowledge, you know, like we already were doing it, but it was just not seen in that way. And our mothers and grandmothers, especially, it was women's area. And then it was seen as a, sometimes also as a like free labor in a contemporary language. It was also interesting how they also experimented with the techniques in Jogja, like for example, the bamboo technique, and then bamboo weaving technique, which is very similar yet different from Nepal. And there are many things, and we would like to share a little bit about Manta and Mimi's collaborative work, about you know, how when relationship is, when we are talking about relationship, friendship, kinship, but most of the time also because of the excessive normative media nowadays, and there's like how it's very boxed in a certain way, and it can be easily boxed in the area of either sexual relationship or a romantic relationship, and which relationship is more important than what. The marriage relationship might be more in the hierarchy, like more important, but they want to break all those hierarchy, all those boxes, and just experience or want people to like open up their own universe and see, no, it's actually really fluid. Yeah. So you can see them.
Process.
Yeah, actually I wanted to show the process.
Our internet is really slow. Sorry for this.
So here are some of the process, but what is the most beautiful thing which happened was the kinship they built with Uncle Joe also was very important. Uncle Joe is the person who built the structure.
Ground structure.
So these are some of the archival images of what. So Monita is the founder of Nepali Asexual Aromantics, and these are some of the images of what they've done in past years. Yeah, Uncle Joe. And also how beautifully Uncle Joe understood about neurodivergence and different types of relationship without questioning it. And I think for both of that, it was one of the most beautiful thing which happened. And also relationship with each other during the phase of residency. And I think that's one of the beautiful thing which happens during the residency, to be able to build that relationship with each other as well.
Thank you, Sheelasha and Hikman. Thank you, Kristen. My name is Eka. I come from Indonesia, especially Momere. Yeah, for me, being a curator in Jogja Biennale, and enter the Indonesian art scene that for me for so long time centered in Java. It is quite challenge, and as a creator, I try to present and try to voice out some stories about Indonesia from the periphery perspective. For me, translocality and transhistoricity is also about how to question art now and here in so many different and various contexts of Indonesia. For me, it is so important to make a question or ask further about the contemporary itself, because it is maybe the reason is very personal for me. Art for me and for so many movement in Eastern and Middle Indonesia is quite related with activism, with art is used as a medium to voice out some was it like notion or also aspiration and ideas about society, ideas about political issues, and something happen in society. So in Jogja Biennale, I discuss a lot with Alia and decide to present some projects that is created by artists and also people that work with society and people that work with archive, and also some activists and also artists. It's not just, but the idea is to share how people approach so many contexts, so many issues with so many background of discipline, and what is collaboration among all the disciplinary that they have. The disciplinary also for me is about daily life. For me, people, farmers and maybe artisan and maybe people in village. They are expert of daily life. So maybe this professional scene like professional artists and also activists and also academician maybe can work with this people that sometimes we see as usual people or just villagers. But for me it's also important to maybe enter deeper and look deeper to the society itself by so many projects and so many initiatives that the participant bring to Jogja Biennale. Maybe I can share some projects. It is I don't have so many documentation, but I maybe use Jogja Biennale Instagram as the archive. So maybe I can share some projects that for me it's quite interesting and relate with the curatorial framework that we use. This is the project of Aum Dayu. Aum Dayu is basically she is a photographer, but she is also musician. She works with yeah, visual, photo, video, and then also music. And in this Biennale, she did residency at least for 2 months and work with people, mostly mothers in Bangun Jiwo. And yeah, she responds the trend or the phenomenon of yeah, gymnastic in the village. Some women or mothers, they do gymnastic, but it is not only for sport, but also by the gymnastic they build like sharing space and safe place to to talk about their struggle, their daily activities, their daily life. So this gymnastic is important because it is also about social cohesion, and Arum enter this this trend, and also she create some songs. The songs is from the mothers, the woman, and they create the songs together, add some remix, add some like disco music, and use the songs as the playlist of the gymnastic. This is maybe simple, but the process and the encounter that they build among Arum and the mothers itself in the village, for me it's so significant. How artists and mothers gather, and the mothers from another, what's it like, another village, one, and I mean mother from around the village come and then make an encounter, and then also make this happen. And we use this beside exhibition, Arum creates a video, a gymnastic video with the mothers, like video clip video, but also we present this gymnastic in opening of one of the opening of Jogja Biennale. So for me, it is quite interesting how artists work with mothers, with the villagers. And this also the project that have like a social practice perspective and action. This is project of Anang Sabtoto and so many collaborators, and Sadir, people in a man in Bangun Jiwo. They make like greenhouse. It is like a laboratorium of farming. And this is also there is also some collaborator from the student of architecture student in Jogja, and they build the greenhouse, and Anang Sabtoto and Sadir make this planting watermelon, and Lan Petani from Maumere, they build like dry irrigation. We can see like in the left bar is the left bar doesn't use or use normal irrigation, and the right bar use a dry drip irrigation. And we can see different. The right bar like has fruit first, and the left bar is still empty, but it's like it is interesting as a laboratorium to compare and to experiment some a farming practice, and also as I said before, as Arum project, it is also significant because can build engagement or participation about farmer, people in village, and also artists. The next project that for me is interesting and what's it significant is also about archive. This is the archive of Ruang Perempuan dan Tulisan, space of women and writings. When we discuss about this project or this exhibition, for me it's not only about the archive but also the movement of the collective, the Ruang Perempuan dan Tulisan itself. Representing them as a movement is significant in Indonesian context, because they also their project mostly observes archive from the women writers in Indonesia that was banned or that was untold in Indonesian literary scene. And their movement itself now, for me, it's important. So in this project, we do not only exhibit or present the archive, but also the movement of Ruang Perempuan dan Tulisan. Beside Ruang Perempuan dan Tulisan, we also present the archive of Black Brothers. Black Brothers is what's it like a band group from Papua, but they are not only musicians, but they also involved in the movement of Papuan freedom, the issue of how military, the Indonesian military came to Papua and then make so many violence there. And they also involved in the campaign of the movement of people in Papua. They are banned from the for the government. They are banished, and they also they are not forbidden to come to Indonesia. They escape to Papua New Guinea, and then there are only a few reviews about the band in Indonesia's art or music scene. So we invite Siku Ruang Terpadu, a collective from Makassar, to make maybe it's preliminary research about Black Brothers, and maybe it can open way to a deeper research for people or for researcher or artists or musician that want to make comprehensive research about Black Brothers in Indonesia and their movement, their cultural movement. As Hitman and Sheelasha told before, we also have Alfred Zami and Tayuko Matsumura. They are couple, Alfred from Timor and Tayuko from Japan. They live and work in Belu, the border of Indonesia and Timor-Leste, but their work tells about Timor, how Timor is divided as a modern state nation, modern nation state. But actually, culturally, people live as a one cultural community there, and they also recorded how the border is very blur and very flexible for the people in the borders, and how they can negotiate the formal or regular administration, and so many Q&A, so many so many term and conditions as a as a person or as a people from different state, but in the same land, in the same island. So it is interesting because the practice of the practice of Alfred and Tayuko is also very close with the village, very close with the borders, with issues with the refugees, and they are involved in research about Timor, about 10, 15 years. So it is like very deep observation from Alfred and Tayu. Tayu also created some notes. It is like a diary. From the very beginning, she arrived in Timor until now. She has like habit to document some, like a piece of story, piece of event that she faced in daily life. And it is very interesting because we can see the negotiation about foreign people and the local people, and how Tayu try to learn and to identify what she found in Timor, and what she interact with people in daily activities. We also have Ama with the research project about Ramadina Triyagayatri. She observes about Boki Emiria Sunasa. That mostly well known as the first female artist in Indonesia visual art scene. The research is actually work in progress, but Ama tried to present her research in very short, which is like essay, but poetic essay or narrative essays. And she tried to present Big Boki Emiria as a ghost. Her discourse about her is also like ghost, like very not so clear, but very there's also many discourse about Boki Emiria that from so many perspectives, and Boki Emiria herself in her life also was like have a very long journey, and there are so many stories about her. So Ama try to present Boki Emiria and her journey of life as a ghost, something like that. We also have Betty Adi, a female artist from Papua. She observe, she makes painting. This is the painting, and the painting she observe like the color from natural material, from plants, soil, and make experimentation about the color. And she paints some woman activists that she faced, and for her very bring so many inspirations for her works and for her activism as artist and activist. So yeah, this is the painting of Betty Adi. And we also have Monica Apsari. Yeah, mostly, yeah, her works is yeah, closely similar with Arum. She works with mothers, villagers in Panggung Harjo. This is the installation about yeah, Rahim, and she also yeah, work with, yeah, make songs and make some make a music performance with mothers in Panggung Harjo. Yeah, this is Monica Apsari and the mothers from Panggung Harjo in the opening of Jogja Biennale. Yeah, we also have like some artists that work with issue of land, like Lembana Artgo Ecosystem, or collective from Madura. They did residency with a collective video game from Labuan Bajo, West Flores, and these two collective tell about the relationship between people and land, their land. Lembana Artgo Ecosystem mostly talk about, yeah, how Madura people embodied the philosophy about land in their daily activities about as a farmers, especially tobacco farmers. And video game mostly talk about how land, the philosophy of land change time by times. In traditional perspective, land is mother, but yeah, capitalism come, and then yeah, the perspective about mother becomes so domestic. Woman plays in domestic role for the from the traditional practice, and nowadays they face like the bigger phenomena, how, yeah, tourism, how a big infestation come, and then grab the local land, from the local, and Labuan Bajo become like new urban in very short time, because they have beautiful nature that can be sold as a premium tourism destination in Indonesia. So yeah, collective video game that live and work in Labuan Bajo, they make work that talk about how their perspective about this phenomena, the land grabbing in Labuan Bajo, because of yeah, the exoticization that built by Indonesian government for the local. Okay, maybe that's my elaboration. We can discuss further. Thank you, Christian.
Thank you, Eka, and thank you, Adelina. Thank you, Sheelasha. Thank you, Hitman and Alia, of course. It was I tried not to interrupt you, of course. We run definitely later than what we expected, but I think it was necessary because of how intense the accounts of these projects were, and how important I think it felt. If you want to join me with video, we can quickly. I have a few questions that I wrote down while you were presenting, and it's also nice to see you all with the face. So yeah, thank you very much. It was I think it really gave our viewers, and hopefully it will keep doing this, a sense of the richness behind the research and the outcome of the biennial. I wrote down a few questions. Of course, if there is anyone in the Zoom that wants to interrupt me or us later in the discussion, feel free to raise your hand or to write it in the chat. I'll keep an eye on everything. But it's difficult to entangle everything, but I'll try to at least give or make a few questions that can spark a bit of a discussion. And maybe the first question is a very generic one, but maybe interesting for those of us and those of our members that are actively producing biennials and working with curators from different regions and so on, which is about the process behind your own collaboration as curators and artists that were working as curators, coming together for a project like this, some of you from the region, but others not. How was the interaction? What kind of dialogue did you have between you when you were preparing for the exhibition? Not just for the exhibition, but the research, for example, as well.
Sorry, Christian, to interrupt.
Yes.
And sorry that I cannot turn on my video, but I might not cannot join until the end because I have another meeting. But I want to add a little bit from the very complete presentation already presented by the curators. Is also a little bit connected to your questions in how different contexts translated to the history of the Biennale Jogja itself. So maybe the second question about how the collaboration process happened and developed, the curators can explain later on. But I noticed maybe this is the aftermath of the opening, because most of the curators, they left after 1 week of the opening. So the 1 week, of course, is kind of like very much about celebrating of the project being open to public, how the public engage, and then we had quite big crowds of the international art community attended the opening. So it's kind of like very much kind of like the how you call it, like joyful and full of appreciation moment. But then like these days, after 2-3 weeks, interestingly, maybe this is I never discussed before also with the curators, because the conversations just came up recently. And then I read some comments from the audience here in Jogja, how they see this kind of like direction towards decolonizations, towards the shifting of the artistic practice and the you know, like transformation of the aesthetic vision is quite surprising for the local community. So, for example, I just follow very long debate between the audience and one of our board members, and they said that going to the village and at the same time presenting works with all these organic materials or like the craftsmanship approach, for them is like going backward. So they questioning the Biennale Jogja, why instead of thinking about the future and bringing all this technology and like all the digital speculation in artistic practice, why the Biennale Jogja for them stepping backwards to this like more like craft and I don't know how to translate, but maybe it's like for them it's the presentations looks like all the works a bit like how you call it? Nanti Eka mungkin bisa terangin ya, rasa kecamatan. So it's like you want to be international, but the sensitivity stays like in a village. So that's what they see that. So I think it's quite interesting how the idea of decolonization and the shifting towards the practice of indigenous community, indigenous art expression, cultural expression, and the politics of identity in a way kind of like intention or challenging the notion of cosmopolitanism from the local audience. So I think this can be also like interesting point for discussion later, how for us it's very important that the artist coming back to the organic materials, looking into the local context and all the embodied knowledge and all the narrative behind the context itself. But then because of the construction of the knowledge production that being formed by the modern art school, so all this kind of expression being seen by the local audience as going backwards instead of like the speculation towards the future. So I think I just want to mention this, how the some of the local audience responded to our practice here.
It's an interesting
Thank
insight. Yeah, thank you, Alia. It's an interesting insight and maybe definitely something we can add to the topics. Yeah, I'm still interested in the first question, but if you want to react to this first, please go ahead.
So I think it's also like, like we are not just like institutionally or infrastructure wise or, like in many ways, not just colonized, but also, like how we analyze ourselves, like when our memories are also colonized, so through that, this kind of perceptions are always there. And it's also like how limited of our perceptions or perspective looking to art or the art practice. Because the foundation always, like when we, discuss about the contemporary art practice, the foundation is always, or the reference is always to the West or the museums or the Western institutions, or which are like well invested or well, presented in a very sophisticated manner, and we can't, relate our realities when we share or present in our kind of very organic or basic, based on our reality.
But that happens in the, like, for example, very similar discussion also happens in like for indigenous resistance, for example. Indigenous people who are protecting their lands are seen as anti-development, and that's a very common thing. Because so recently there's a major national development project in Kathmandu Valley, and farmers' lands are taken, by the army, and then like the roads are by the government and through the army, and then there are like major roads being built there. 7 major development projects are there, and then when the farmers are protesting to protect their own lands, and their activists are there to protest, and then the national newspaper can, and also in generally the general notion is like, oh, they're so savage, they don't want development, like they don't want modernism, they want Nepal to be backward.
But yeah, from our side, it was like, it's a very intentional move. It's a political move. So whatever we did, it's a very intentional. And the choice of, like the presentations or working with the artist, or the, like the project we collaborated are very intentional, and at the same time, it's a political. So there can be like, like people can agree with us, also disagree with us. But I think it will take time to, like understand, especially in our region, to know our own history, our own roots, our knowledge, our philosophy, and the way of our living. So maybe in futures or in coming day, people will slowly try to acknowledge and appreciate the way what we are, so we don't look always other, or always try to get valid from Western institutions or the Western, the perception of art.
Yeah, it's a kind of internalized phobia as well.
I think Eka and Adele also can add more on
Yeah, I think actually the discussion is very complex, related to how the local audience in Yogyakarta sees the biennial, and the struggle that we all have is everywhere the same, because Eka's struggle is then more significant in Indonesia to resist that kind of Western thinking about arts, which is very common in Eastern Europe as well, like how artists are dominated by this imagination of how art should be, and then following this technology, and then it's actually what is backwards, actually, it's also a refusal of history, a refusal of remembrance, and refusing that, and also coming from this post-communist location and history, there is so much of the refusal to acknowledge and to look into the past, into the values that have been shattered by these colonial forces. So in Jogja is also surprising that this happens, and why the discussion is complex is also because of the framework of a biennial, and then all the problematics that come when you organize such an event, which on one side it tries to be so inclusive of different publics, to be an educational platform, to to just have a larger audience that could come and visit, instead of like another event that happens in Jogja, which is very very popular and very celebrated by the people, because it's a lot of consuming and eye candy works, and then you can just take selfies, and everything is so consumerist, and yeah, it also reminds me of what a prominent intellectual from Indonesia mentioned about the biennial, that he mentioned something, I don't want to say his name, but he mentioned something that biennial is too ideological. So how to operate then in this framework of refusing to be ideological, to have a political position, like Hitman said, it's it's a very complex discussion. So maybe I think the work of Eka is very important. So maybe you can share something.
It feels very much like we're talking about scraping and working on leftovers of colonial thinking and imperial thinking, especially when we talk about what art should be, no? This idealized, which you talked about in terms of only acknowledging a Western idea of the art that's very much left over from imperial times, I think. Be it in Indonesia or in Eastern Europe or wherever else. I think it's something we face almost on a daily basis. Eka, sorry.
It's okay. Yeah, for me it's also good news because we can use this kind of presentation. The Biennale itself can be tools or like parametric to investigate the what's the perspective, what's the idea of the people around us. We can deny that all the tendency all there are so many perspectives that have like Western tendency or like modern tendency to use local materials, local knowledge as an exotic one, not as the main model, the main way to articulate their notion, their expression. But it's also can become a reflection for us also, because in our curatorial discussion we also have like question. I myself have a question. How can people, for especially local people, the villagers, can interact with this all presentation? And for me, we can answer this question during the 40 days of exhibition, and it is quite interesting if we can be open, like we open all the response. We can also tag all the comments as a reflection for us. Is it significant to what's it to rethinking about local? What is the struggle? What is the problem? For me, maybe these responses, these comments can be also a reflection for us with our significant question. Is it significant to present this Biennale in village?
Yeah, I think also somehow I assume before our opening and then before the Biennale happened that the process of decolonizing will be a bit, it's more difficult when you do it on your own hometown rather than in, for example, what happened with Ruang Rupa in Germany. So, because then there is this wave of shaping the new, shaping the new ecosystem, like deconstructing the art system, and then of course rewriting the knowledge production and all these terms and associations, or like term and movement that already somehow scattered in different places around the world and then being centered in one area in Europe. But then when you try to bring back the practices in the local context, we kind of facing the two challenges. Like first is really like all the educational ecosystem and infrastructure from the art world that already being set up, and there is this idea of internationalism, cosmopolitanism that really much based on Western education and the impact of colonialism. While when they see, like, they think like, why all these corns or these tobaccos or the rice were scattered all over the venues in the exhibition, they felt like it's too close.
We lost you.
Them all these ritual. Hello.
Yeah.
You're back.
Yeah.
You're back.
Okay, yeah. So I think the villagers, or like most of the local artists, think that it is something that you see already as part of your everyday life. So some of the question is like, what is new, or what is being seen as art in this kind of practice? You know, it's kind of like all the time like this, because when you present this in your local, you don't see this as exotic. But when you bring this to Europe, sometimes this kind of object being seen as something more exotic, or you're not so familiar with. So I'm interested to this kind of tension of all the response from the people from the art world and non-art world, because recently also we started also bring all the community in the village to come to see the exhibition. So it's quite interesting. As Eka mentioned, we should just collect and gather all the commentaries and also response from the audience, and later on we can continue this discussion when the Biennale finish. But then, yeah, now I just want to share. So there are some response that is really seeing this as something backward, and then at the same time also, as Adel mentioning, there is a group of people or the community that see what we have done as something more ideological basis. So I think it's quite interesting to mapping out the responses.
Yeah, it's interesting for me because the public program of Biennale try to open the audience, try to invite like students, people in the village to come to see exhibition, and it is also the effort to make this event closely related to the villagers, and maybe they can also have so many assumptions, have so many responses of the all the experiences come to Gudang, come to come to farm land. But for me it is so important to open this public program more inclusive, more wider to the people, not only in Indonesian we say kita saja in our zone, in our comfort zone, but also try to open it to the we usually define as like usual public or common public, something like that. It's very important for me.
I would love to continue the discussion, because I think we just started, but we're 2 hours in and we were planning for an hour and a half tops. So maybe we can find other moments to keep discussing about this, because I do think that it's very important topics. And as I said, I wrote at least a couple of questions for each of you while you were presenting. So I think there's a lot to dig in and to really understand not just these dynamics, but then more specific dynamics on certain projects that you presented and how these were received, especially through the eyes and through this perspective, through these lenses that we described now. But I think for the time being, I have to close it here. I'm really sorry about this. because yeah, if it was up to me, I think I would continue for the next few hours, but we have to consider also public that is watching this, and that's, you know, our usual frames. But no, I really want to thank you for presenting it, and maybe we can really think of a way of keeping this discussion open and going, because I think it's something that I mean, Alia mentioned already Documenta last year, but I do think that the discussion is much wider than that. I think Documenta last year was not an initiator of something, but just a response to something which is happening already, and which I feel in the projects that you're describing is very much ongoing. So it's a very big topic, and I hope that through IBA we can find other platforms to keep talking about all of these topics. But yeah, I want to, for the time being, I really want to thank you for presenting the project, for participating, and for engaging in these 2 hours, which were really, really important, I think, hopefully also for our public.
Thank you.
Thank
so
you
much.
all.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Alia.